This podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of our title sponsor, Manulife, and today's presenting sponsor, BDC. These organizations are committed to supporting our local economy and small businesses. It's currently BDC Small Business Week from October 20th to 26th, which is an annual celebration of entrepreneurship that BDC has been organizing for 45 years. So in that spirit, I'm excited to introduce today's guest on the Behind the Business podcast. Joining me is Leigh Merswolke of LCM Property Services. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Well, happy to be here.
Now, it is Small Business Week. We've got so many great success stories in Waterloo region. We want to tell the LCM story. But so tell us how your business started and what you do, and then we'll dive into some more questions.
Sure. Well, like most businesses, it was a small beginning.
Yeah.
So I worked at Research in Motion at the time. My wife did a small cleaning job with a condominium. And, as things progressed, she was asked by that property manager to take on a larger building. And that's kind of where we started. And, as Research in Motion decided to make some adjustments, I decided to join her in that venture, and we grew the business together. So we care for condominiums. Mm-hmm. We think of us as the services arm of your property manager. So we supply your superintendents, your cleaners, your handyman. We do the parking garage cleaning, pretty much anything that's related to the building, right up to where you would need a trade.
Now, let's rewind just a little bit. So at RIM, what did you do at RIM? Were you on the tech side? Were you on the services side? But I mean, you weren't doing property management at RIM.
No, we were, when I worked at Research in Motion, I was carrier sales manager. And what that meant was I sold BlackBerry through a particular carrier. I worked with Bell here in Canada, and I worked with Sprint in the US.
Okay, so that leads perfectly into the next question I want to ask is, most entrepreneurs don't have a straight path, or like you wake up when you're 12 and say, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to do X. This came from circumstance. The opportunity arose with your wife doing cleaning, and you wanted to make a change as Research in Motion was going through some ups and downs. So it wasn't a straight path. But how did your career in previous parts, so what you did at RIM and even before that, help you to prepare to be an entrepreneur? Because that's a whole different it's a whole different thing to be an entrepreneur and own your own business.
Oh, absolutely. And everything that you do in life, you can draw on when you're in your own business. And that's really important that you do have some of that experience beforehand. And even, before Research in Motion, I worked selling cars. I was sold life insurance. And that gave me the people skills mm-hmm. that you really need to get to know people. When I worked with Research in Motion and Microsoft, that gave me strategic thinking, strategic business thought. And with Research in Motion, we were growing, 100% or 600% at the time, year over year. It gave you that drive that you can do it. And so there was so many different things that I could draw on from my previous experience. Even when I was young, my dad owned apartment buildings, and I vacuumed the floors, mm-hmm. mopped the entranceways, and so I had a good background on how to care for buildings right from the beginning.
Now, just a bit on your company. Is it? I mean, you manage. You're the manager of the services that are required to keep mm-hmm. the building going. How many staff do you have? And I mean, do you outsource this? Do you have a team? How does your business operate?
So we have an in-house team of about 100 people, mm-hmm. and we care for about 70 buildings in the region. And so those people are going to vary from your building managers, we call them. There's mm-hmm. your superintendents, to your support cleaners. We have 2 people that are full-time just for after hours. So, you get those emergencies in the
yep.
night. And so that staff cares for all of the different needs in the building. And then we have your handymen and a small construction team to help out as well, and care for the bumps and bruises that you get in a large.
Oh, sure. So the last thing, and then we'll move on because I'm interested in a bit of the entrepreneurial story. But what was your growth like? I mean, you didn't start with 100 people. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
you and your wife started the business. Maybe one or two. You're doing it yourself. How did that growth work? And at what point along the way did you determine? Because that's always a scary thing for an entrepreneur, for a new business, is when do you do that first hire? When because that's added cost, it's more responsibility. You become less working on the business or more on the business than working in the business. How did that growth work for you?
So growth was rapid. We incorporated in 2012, and we grew at about 100% or more each year after that.
Wow.
And there were breaking points that with hiring that, when you got to be a 5-person company, you had some challenges. Really, once you get over 20 people, you really have to start building an infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
As a new to business, I didn't really know how to do that. So we would have to reach out and really figure out how we were going to support the company, from accounting to HR and so forth.
Okay, and we're going to come back to that because BC is a part of that about the advisory part of what they do, along with how they can help be a support lender for different growth aspects of your business. But the theme of BDC's Small Business Week this year is the power of small, defying the odds, and most small businesses are resilient by their very nature. You have to problem solve. You don't have a big team. Everyone's doing a little bit of everything. So they're resilient and they face challenges each and every day. Maybe share one for our listeners. What's a challenge that you've faced more recently, and how have you overcome it? Because I think it's instructive for people to hear. Everyone has challenges, whether you're 100 people or 100 employees in business, or whether you're a startup. Everyone has challenges. Yeah. What's the most recent one you've faced, and how did you demonstrate that resiliency of getting past it?
Well, I think I have to go back to COVID. It was challenging for all business. There were moments when we weren't sure where we would go from there.
Yeah.
As a service that cared for the buildings, cleaning and maintenance, we were deemed that we could continue working. So, we had to work straight through. So how do you keep your staff safe, motivated? We were actually sewing masks, ourselves, because you couldn't get them.
Yep.
You couldn't get rubber gloves, even disinfectant. I had to try and buy it en masse. These challenges, were game stoppers in many instances. But one of the largest challenges that we faced during COVID and after COVID was mental health challenges, because it was severe stress on people then. And we see that continuing. So what we did do was we put in place a mental health line through Manulife, actually, to help us out to support the team. We did have that originally in part of our benefit plan for some, but we released it for everyone during COVID. And we found that was a really good way to help people through. We also wanted to keep people positive through COVID. So we worked with Binghamans, and we rented out their drive-in theater.
Yeah.
And so everybody could be in their own cars. And it was a nice way to be able to stand in front of the entire team and talk with them. Yeah. Yet they're all separate in their own vehicles and enjoy something that was encouraging.
Yeah. And so this kind of brings, it's a follow-on. Successful entrepreneurs by nature are you overcome these challenges, but a lot of that is relying on your network and developing partners that you can work with. So when some of those COVID ones, those were, as you say, showstoppers for your business. But how did you use your network? Because I think this is one of the things people don't realize, the network they have, the people that they've interacted with, and you have to rely on others to support your business. And first thing starts with asking for help and figuring out who might be able to help. Talk about how your network of connections has helped you, along your growth pattern.
Yeah, so it's important in small business or any business that you not rely only on yourself. You have to accumulate opinions from your support network,
Mm-hmm.
including your own executive team. I would reach out to some that I worked with at Research in Motion. We also now have and have had for a long period of time, a fractional CFO that was introduced to us through BDC. He has been a great resource. And so you share your concerns or problems with them and get the feedback. And then you accumulate that information so you make at least a good educated decision. You know, it is challenging sometimes to know which way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just rely on yourself, it's likely you're going to make a bad decision.
So BDC, and this is, I mean, we're proud to be partnering with BDC because they are such an important part, and probably we want more people to know what they can do because they're not a replacement for your traditional bank or your big bank or credit union. They're complementary. They can do some things. They have a different risk profile. They're meant to work with small businesses and in particular entrepreneurs. Um, Talk about how you developed that relationship with BDC and how have they been able to support you? Because, in some businesses, it may be more bricks and mortar. I got to build a new plant or I have to, in yours, how have they supported your growth along the way? Um, because that's another part of that relationship. Like they have advisors and advisory services on top of the financials that can help you kind of with some of those challenges, because sometimes there's strategic challenges. There's planning challenges. Talk about your relationship with BDC and how they've helped along the way.
So BDC has been a close partner for us, and we first were introduced to them through that period of terrific growth.
Right.
And one of our number one challenges with that terrific growth is you can't really borrow from banks because if you're this number this year, you're 1 million this year, and you're going to be 2 million next year. They're basing we can help you out on
I'm 1 million.
Yeah, what you had last year.
Yeah.
So BDC was able to see through that, through the growth, but also supply those advisory services. And one of the most important things BDC helped us with was doing budgeting and cash flow so we could budget ahead for that growth.
Yeah.
How many trucks am I going to need next year? Oh, I just bought trucks when I needed them.
Yeah.
No, we plan that ahead, build a budget so that we have a reliable bottom line that we can share with banks as we grow so we can get proper funding in place. And so they also taught us the cash flow process.
Right.
And so that was great. And then most recently with CDAP, the Canadian Digital Adoption Program, helping us to get some of the stuff that we still had on pen and paper.
Yep.
And moving that to applications, CRM, all the good things that are going to help us to continue to grow.
And I think my experience and when we've talked with others that have worked with BDC, it's building that relationship with your own advisor, and they say, "Oh, geez, you got HR issues or thinking of doing the next set of hiring." There's always someone in their stable because they do provide advisory services. I think it's on 10 or 11 different areas of expertise. Along with online services, they have information online for anyone watching. You can go to bdc.ca and find that. But your advisor, when you say, geez, because you're talking about the business holistically and say, gee, now it's an HR issue, maybe it's a supply chain issue, maybe it's, capital expenditures like vehicles or new equipment that you need to do. The advisor is that point person that brings in the expert or the expert matter.
Absolutely. So we can go to them with any of our concerns without really feeling like you want to nervous about it. They're there to support you, and as you say, they bring in the right people, and we've done that numerous times. Even now, having one of their suggested advisors as part of our team, so that we can have them, on a monthly basis meet with us. And pretty much anything that you need, they can give you some direction, but also be there for the financing as you need to as well.
I'm interested in this because something sparked with what you said. Do you sometimes go and say, here's what we want to do, and then change course after you've had the conversation and say, geez, that's not a good idea from a financial perspective, or wow, there's a way better way to do this from a human capital perspective? Or, I mean, is it that kind of relationship where you say, kind of, here's where my vision is where I want to go, and this is what I want to do? And can you be talked out or into another, pathway with your advisors at BDC?
Absolutely. So one time in particular, I remember meeting with them to discuss the idea that we would move into building tiny homes. And, that was kind of a big thing for Kitchener-Waterloo. It opened up, and there were all these different thoughts on that. And BDC looked at it with us, our advisor, and said, stick to your core, and that was good advice, because we were able to continue to grow our core. And if we had gone that other route, I think we would have just been stretched too thin. And so it's important to understand why that advice is too. So we broke down the numbers on it as well and said, okay, well, if you continue to add more of your services to your buildings, this is the revenue and bottom line you get. If you try and do this other course, you're not really benefiting or getting ahead. And so we're able to really understand from both a financial and a physical resource point of view where to focus.
Yeah, and sometimes the best business decision you make is the one that you didn't make.
Often that is the truth. Yes.
So, okay. There's lots of small businesses that'll be watching, and one of the reasons our relationship with BDC is, our Chamber of Commerce, most chambers of commerce, and frankly, business communities across the country, say 80% of businesses have 50 employees or less. So you're on the larger side of businesses. I mean, think about that. At 100 employees, you'd be one of the larger businesses in town when you look at it, because the vast majority are small business. But those small businesses are listening and watching and looking forward to be the day when they grow from 5 to 10, or from 10 to 20, or from 20 to 50 employees, because that's what everyone is looking for, is that growth pattern. What advice, you've talked around a little bit, but if you kind of said, geez, your goal is to start your business and then scale it up, what would be the advice you'd give to an entrepreneur that's watching today?
Well, like we discussed, is to stay focused on your goals. But the most important thing is to stay positive. There are going to be some challenges along the way, things that could make you stop. So not giving up is also important. Giving up on the things that are not successful, but also strategically looking at your business and understanding what part is profitable, what part is not. And in some cases, you're going to lop off a piece that's not. We broke into doing, we're in all these buildings. I thought, we may as well offer to clean all the individual units. It was a bad decision.
Bad, yeah.
So, we had to give those customers notice. It was, a tough thing, but it was the right thing to do, because It wasn't profitable.
Right.
And just didn't make sense. And so you do need to reevaluate. Sometimes that means even stepping out, take a weekend away and just focus on your meditate on your business as to what is successful, what's not. And doing that annually with your support team is a very good idea.
One other question, and before we kind of start to wrap up, being an entrepreneur and running a small business, it can be lonely. It's not like you have a big senior management team. Everyone's a leader in some respect when you got that number of employees, but it can be lonely. It can be lonely because you're running your own business. How do you make sure that you make space and time, because it is so busy, and you sometimes you can feel like it's just you, to keep that work-life balance? That's still important to everyone, making time for family, making time for your personal interests and your mental health and all those sorts of things. How do you kind of manage that?
Well, it is important to buy out the time for yourself and your family. For yourself, getting out for that morning walk is important to stay focused. Also, family vacation. When you go out as a family, schedule time. You're going to have to every day still check the phone, You're not going to be successful if you walk away from it.
Yeah.
But schedule that time and say, okay, everybody, I'm going to be available for these 2 hours in the day. Turn it on, get your messages, turn it off.
Yeah.
And be there for your family during that period of time. Because you need that too. You need a little
To recharge and let it go.
Yeah. So recently, we just decided we need a little bit of time to take a look at some water. So we drove out to PEI and phone's on the whole time. We joined all of our business meetings, but we take a walk along the ocean, and that really recharges you.
Absolutely.
So you do have to buy out the time.
Okay, so and your story in this in the first phase of your business, you followed a journey. Where do you see the next? I mean, 10 years is a long way out, but for a lot of businesses now, you kind of say, "What's the next year look like?"
Yeah.
Can you plan 3 to 5 years of where at least what your goals are, and where do you see your business sector in 10 years? Because we know that this region is poised for growth.
Yeah.
We're going to be, the decisions have been made a long time ago that we're going to be somewhere between 900,000 and 1 million people by 2050, or give or take 5 years on either side. What does that mean for your planning of what your business can do? Because there's going to be more people, there'll be more apartment buildings, there'll be more properties to be taken care of. How do you kind of see the next kind of 1 to 10 years?
Yeah, so we always try to plan at least 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
So we take a look at, really how many buildings can we physically add and care for in a growth. Our years of doubling our growth that's too hard.
Yeah,
you have to be careful, and it can sink you as well. So we try to strategically grow with customers that.
So you mean planning whatever you say it's $1 million, you say like we want to grow, but we're comfortable growing as gross revenue of another 200,000, because that means 2 more stuff. Like you're methodically going through and saying, what can we accommodate in terms of what that growth is? So on a percentage basis, how many staff, the overhead. How you plan it?
Exactly. That's how we plan it out. And that was something that went right back to our BDC advisor. Is okay, if you want to add, 3 buildings, does that mean you need to add another regional manager? How many staff, how many vehicles, how much equipment, and actually, cost all that. And, we look at that as a growth each year. And, if we look 10 years out, we have a good idea of how quickly we can grow in a proper, reasonable fashion. And there's lots and lots of business out there. So we do see some competitors who have started to copy us. So we do appreciate that too.
Flattery,
yeah. Most days we do. But, there's lots of business for everybody. And so we might like to try and even support them.
So I'm going to add this one in. It just occurred to me. While you're a young man, at my advanced age, I would be, if I was in your shoes, I would be starting to think about how do I, what is the next step? Is that
right?
Is there someone in your family that, someone in my family that wants to take over the business? If not, how do you prepare it for sale? Because you started this business. It's not like it's a generational business. Is that something that you have some conversation with BDC example about, like some of those future, like how to make sure that you're maximizing the value of your business? Because you may hold on to it, you may go to another generation, but you may want to sell it too, or partner with someone else. Is those some of the longer term things you think about with BDC?
So absolutely, we've had those conversations, and we already have identified partners that might be good to work with, that would carry it into the future even larger.
Yeah.
But I myself see myself at the helm for at least another 10 years anyway. And I don't see myself ever fully retiring, but we do want to see the business, and it wants to be, we want the youth of the next generation to be able to take it on and handle it.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this series, while it's Small Business Week and it's focused on entrepreneurs, it's really about leaders, and it's business leaders. And everyone that comes on the podcast, you agree to answer these rapid fire questions, because I always find it fascinating on how individuals answer this, because sometimes it's business, sometimes it's more personal in nature. but I think for listeners, it really gives us a sense of how leaders think and the things that drive them. So, what I always ask is if you had the power of the rearview mirror, where you could look back and say, and give your younger self. I know you're only 26, but if you could tell your 16-year-old self, what would you tell yourself?
Well, there were a few things that came to mind here, and number one is to carve out the time for you personally and for family. I did spend too much time focused on work, and so that's something. Then you look back and your kids are married and so forth. You're like, wow, that went fast.
Yeah.
And so you do wish you cut it a little more time. We did okay, but could have done better. But from a business point of view, really putting away more during the good times for the dry spells.
Yes,
When the dry spells come, it's hard. I think particularly when COVID hit, we didn't know whether what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And you have that little panic moment, where you wish you had a little more of a nest egg to deal with those big challenges.
Mm-hmm. And I do like your comment about kids, because I remember when you have kids, it's especially babies, you feel as though the day will never end because you're constantly caring for them, and then you snap your fingers and go, "My car's gone," or they've gone to university, and say, "What happened? It all went by in the snap of a finger." So good advice is taking time for the things that are important to you. Along the same vein, and this could be a personal lesson or business or both, up to you. We all learn lessons, and sometimes it's from success, sometimes it's for failure. But what would you say is one of the greatest lessons as an entrepreneur and as a in business that has been the greatest lesson you've learned?
I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, like I thought it was going to be hard to get the business. If you're good at what you do, the business will come. The biggest challenge is people and how you manage staff. And I think it's important that, as a leader, you think of yourself as a servant to your staff, because your staff need you to be there for them. But, you can't think of it as a military process where you tell somebody to do something, they're going to do it. It doesn't work that way. You need to build respect by being humble and thinking of yourself last, because your staff are the most important thing to your business. They're the backbone. They're the ones that are there every day making it happen. And quite honestly, if they don't respect you, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And your business will fail.
Well, I think that there's been a real change where it used to be command and control, and you would say, "Here's what you're going to do," and I guess there was a time when that worked. But servant leadership hasn't
worked for a while.
It hasn't worked for a while, and with every passing day, the next generation does not tolerate that. And I think that's wise advice. Okay, just as we wrap up, inspiration is something that's important for everyone, whether it's on the personal side or in business or both. So what or who has inspired you along the way?
So, I'll give a personal and a business. So personally, my wife has been my largest inspiration. She is both my partner in business and in life. And she is one of the most positive people you'd ever want to meet. She also has a way of, making the room come alive. And in most cases, she would be the one here doing the podcast. She is much better looking and much more charisma. So yeah, she is one that I look up to every day, and she drives me and my ambition and supports me too.
Yeah,
and so that's important. And then from a business point of view, my vice president at Research in Motion was Paul Donald. He's now the CEO of Encircle here in Waterloo.
Oh, wow.
So another one of the spinoffs from Research in Motion, successful businessman. But he was also the one that always taught the basics. He was very methodical about the way he taught you to do business. And much of what he taught me many years ago in Research in Motion, I use in my business today. things like touch points with your staff, getting out and seeing them. He was one that, if you wanted him to go with you, he was always there by your side. And so that is something that I've taken and learned from. And I'm always look to be there for my staff when they need me.
Listen, we could keep going on. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thanks so much for joining us, Leigh, today. I really appreciate getting to hear about your entrepreneurial story and the way that BDC helped along the way. So thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And thanks once again to our title sponsor, Manulife, our presenting sponsor, BDC, and our supporting sponsor, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region.